Well, creatine, in the form of creatine monohydrate, can come into the system and help volumize muscle tissue. Well, what do I mean by that? It helps improve the power with which you can push weight with.
Anytime I hear the word syndrome, as a general rule, I'm thinking, okay, I don't want to own that. I think that that's a group of symptoms that are classified as a quote unquote syndrome, but is it a condition or is it a response, a result of many, many symptoms that because we know that Jesus drank wine, right? We can't say it's bad for you. And what I just quoted was a scripture, where the disciples were told, take a little bit of wine for your stomach, right? So obviously it has some purpose. What if you knew of one thing you could do to help maintain muscle tissue longer in life? Knowing that muscle tissue retention later in life yields more mobility, probably increase in metabolism, and quite possibly an increase in the quality of life. What if you knew about that one thing? What would it be? It is creatine.
Well, creatine, in the form of creatine monohydrate, can come into the system and help volumize muscle tissue. Well, what do I mean by that? It helps improve the power with which you can push weight with, which will improve keeping lean muscle on your frame. Now, creatine does decline with age, and it declines more rapidly once we hit our 40s and 50s and after the hormone signal starts to decline. So the effects of creatine can be very important in maintaining lean muscle mass and strength. We know that the loss of muscle mass is frailty, and frailty is a disease. So who wouldn't want to take a little creatine?
Well, it makes sense. People need to know this is not a foreign substance. It's actually created in the body, it's stored in the body, and it's found in actual foods that we eat, like proteins. It's found in meats, etc. But over the course of time, the ability to synthesize it or make it, store it in the body is actually something that goes down. And that's sort of this life and death/decay process of this thing we call the dirt suit or the temple. But nonetheless, it's a very, very good nutrient. And we were just talking about it. Even today, we exercised before we came here to the studio. We both took creatine. We take it pretty much every day. I think it's it's most well studied out there, but it actually does a lot for the body. And frankly, it's one that I think most people should be doing.
Well, it's got some, studies that show that it improves or it helps injury prevention in tendons, ligaments, and even in nerve compression. It can aid healing in those areas. Also for brain function and cognition. There is some research behind the utilization of creatine for memory.
Well, there's no question we need creatine. I know a lot of people that maybe are science, maybe biochemistry, biohacking nerds. You might look out there in the methylation pathway. You're going to see that actually is where creatine is created. And even by taking creatine, for those of you that are like, going, what? Wait, for those of you that know what we're talking about, I'm not going to describe it today, but just know, if you take creatine, you can salvage methyl groups, which will help you detoxify better and actually manage stress better and repair your DNA better. So there's a whole connection there. How much creatine do you recommend people take?
That's a good question because it's going to be different for the health of the person, the health of their digestive system, and the age of the person as well.
And people are going to ask us, and you're thinking, well, how much do they take? I take 5 grams, sometimes about 7 per day. How much
Is
do you
that
take?
one scoop before and after your workout, or are you actually doing that through your workout?
I've done it both ways. I've done about 2.5 or 3 grams before workout and about 2.5 to 3 after. I did that back when we had the ability to take that in capsule form. We don't have that anymore. Now we got powder, so I just been taking 5 grams to 7 grams at once, and I haven't seen any difference, of course, with which one works better. But I just know the chemistry behind it, the biochemistry behind it. So I'm going to do it, and it's something that we know without question. Even back when we were growing up, this is way back in the old physique days,
Yes.
Creatine's been around for 50 years. It's not something that's new, like, oh my gosh, this is a brand new discovery. They've improved delivery methods. It doesn't really require a loading phase now. You could just take it and get it. I suspect probably the reason it does help with strength is because it helps the muscles hold more water inside those from an intracellular standpoint. So that gives them the ability to hold volume. Volume provides strength, so it can hold the volume of muscle. So that's probably why it works, I would suspect, at least one of the major reasons. But it's a good supplement to take.
Well, and we know that creatine, phosphocreatine in the system is one of the ways that the body utilizes to make energy in the background, of course, besides the Krebs cycle. So it is important in helping muscle, when it's undergoing anaerobic activity, produce energy. It also, of course, we can't really say athletic performance, but if we are maintaining lean muscle mass and we are providing more fluid in the muscle, it would stand to reason that you're able to push more weight and have better endurance.
Well, there's no doubt about that. And creatine is great. I mean, it's not something that's going to hurt us. It's something that's going to help us. And it just makes sense that the more we age in life, I'm talking about the chronological aging process, the more nutritional adjuncts or additives or supplements we need, because we're not getting the adequacy of production. People say all the time, well, I don't want to take another pill, yada, yada. I don't want another powder. I put the powder creatine normally in Kingdom Fuel. Sometimes I put it in a brand new product we're going to be coming out with for everybody to have. It's called Kingdom Energy, and we're going to put some in there as well. So we're excited about the idea of using creatine to help create energy, get it in your system all the time, and make it easy as far as a delivery method. It's something that you should be considering if you have young athletes in the family. Consider putting that on them. If you're a weekend warrior, do that. But if you're just a general Joe Q public, you need it too. So creatine helps the muscles, helps energy. I can't think of anything better than that. There you go.
POTS, postural orthostatic tachycardia syndrome.
What is that? Find out next.
There's a lot of talk these days about human enhancement.
Terms like biohacking, bioharmonizing, biosynergizing, stacking, resilience, and anti-fragility.
In our clinic, the Functional Medical Institute, we've been helping people of all shapes, sizes, and backgrounds improve their quality of their physiology and maximize their lives.
So, you can follow the latest fads and gimmicks and maybe find some things that work for you.
Or you can add Kingdom Fuel to your daily regimen right now.
It's the simple start to a transformed life.
Our unique meal shakes are balanced, low glycemic, rich in fiber with 20 grams of clean protein, essential vitamins and minerals, healthy fats, and organic fruits and vegetables. Kingdom Fuel is vegan with a complete amino acid profile.
No gimmicks, just proven results.
Start today at sherwood.tv/fuel.
I know you are God. I can't believe I trusted you.
I'm Michelle. I'd love to work here.
Do you have what it takes to be a champion?
Yes, Master, I do.
We need to get you more competition.
And
National?
finally, the Olympic team selection tournament.
Did somebody try to hurt you again?
Yes. But I don't think anyone will ever believe me.
She's working on being a homeless Olympic champion
And now she has somebody footing the bill for college so she can become a doctor?
We have to pray on the list so that in all of God's glory, each item on the list will come to a fruitful and gratifying beginning.
I don't know about you, but I have to have that cup of coffee in the morning. And Kingdom Cup is mold-free, it is pesticide-free, and it is organic. It's got this flavor that is delicious. You don't even have to put cream or sweetener in it.
And it's Kingdom Cup with a K,
K.
right? So this is important. 50% of all coffee at least contains mold. And this is a key thing. That's in bean form, right? So you're going to be a little grinder. They're just a few bucks. Grind it up, put it in your maker, and make it. Why did we go with the bean form, the whole bean? Because ultimately the powder form is the one that gathers the most moisture. And that means the more potential mold development. So this is actually organic, mold-free, certified. It's got a little certificate with it. That's important because ultimately people drink coffee. It's cultural. And so we tried to meet the culture where it is and create a healthy alternative.
Today's topic is a common topic, more common than you think, a topic called POTS. Well, what does that stand for? It stands for Postural Orthostatic Tachycardia Syndrome.
We need to stay with POTS probably for most people. Funny thing about that, I've heard a lot of people recently that have been quote unquote diagnosed with POTS. It's more common today. And I've actually heard people tie it to a consequence and sort of associated with even well-known viruses that we've been subjected to recently.
Well, oftentimes it is tied to a consequence, the consequence of being acutely ill for long periods of time. It could be a tick-borne illness. It could be mold illness. It could be the Epstein-Barr virus. It could be any number of things that just exhaust the adrenals and create this instability of the blood pressure to normalize itself from sitting to standing. What does POTS really stand for? P is postural, O is orthostatic, T is tachycardia, and S is syndrome. So when you go from sitting to standing, changing posture, your blood pressure can't adapt quickly enough, so your heart rate goes up, causing all these symptoms like dizziness, lightheadedness, faintness, feeling like you're going to pass out, and just a syndrome of weakness.
We've seen that a lot lately. And anytime I hear the word syndrome, as a general rule, I'm thinking, okay, I don't want to own that. I think that that's a group of symptoms that are classified as a quote unquote syndrome, but is it a condition or is it a response, a result of many, many symptoms that result from something else? I think it's the latter. And I look at that whole idea, if it's really having a hard time controlling blood pressure, I want to get the vascular system improved. I want to figure out what impairs that. I want to figure out maybe they've got some electrolyte imbalances, maybe that they have some nitric oxide deficiencies, maybe they're eating inflammatory foods, and all those areas really do play a part.
When we do find that it's more common in young women, the ages of 15 to 50, it's more common. Again, after a consequential illness, and oftentimes that system is unfit.
Yep.
So starting to slowly return to exercise, where you start moving the system or ambulating the system more frequently, increasing the fitness level. What pumps blood back to the heart is going to be the muscles in the lower legs. So if the lower legs are weak, there may be an increase in that syndrome of POTS.
Yep.
Something else that really helps is compression stockings. I know they're very uncomfortable. You can get over-the-counter stockings that have less millimeters of mercury in the compression, so they aren't as hard to get on and they're not as uncomfortable in the heat. But those compression stockings really help return blood to the heart in a system that may have perhaps weak valves in the vessels of the legs. And that's a genetic inherited issue that oftentimes without compression stockings, we can't ever get ahead of.
Well, you mentioned two things right there, really kind of cool. One of the signs of that is an accumulation of fluid lower because it doesn't have the power to get it back. which would make sense with the dizziness. Another thing, when you talk about exercise, a lot of people really get hung up on that and get told they can't exercise, but they can. It's called a recumbent bike. Sit down there and pedal your legs. You're not going from sitting to standing. You're not moving that up and down. You're working those legs. You're working that heart. That is incredibly beneficial for conditions like this.
Yes, there is also, if we don't think about it, we can become dehydrated because we're not drinking enough fluid. And then if we're not drinking enough fluid, oftentimes we get low in electrolytes. So simply adding a little scoop of Celtic or Himalayan salt or even a balanced electrolytes to water can help improve the nutrients that the adrenals need to actually make those stress hormones. If the adrenals get exhausted or there's an imbalance in the ability to make stress hormones, there might be an inability to maintain blood pressure. Also, if those things don't work, there, of course, are medications that we can reach for as a last resort.
Well, and they would be last resort, because I think that what we've seen a lot of times is we'll tell people to just have a little bit of water with maybe a half teaspoon or quarter teaspoon of one of those salts. You can use, and it's one of my favorites, you can use like an ATP Ignite or an ATP Ignite workout, which has electrolytes. We're talking about, that calcium, potassium, sodium, those things like that. And even if you sweat a lot, right? Let's think about this. You could actually drain those electrolytes out there. So even while you're exercising, sitting down, you would want to replete with those electrolytes and sort of, it's not that you want to sit on a recumbent bike and do that all the time. You eventually want to stand up, but just stand up slowly and think about from sitting to standing slowly until you get that body time to catch up. And I think you can get out of that syndrome personally.
One of the tricks that we always teach people is focus your eyes on a point in the distance and then stand up if you have POTS or postural orthostatic tachycardic syndrome.
Yeah, and that works great. And we've seen this a lot of times. And I think that the downside of this is that people that sort of have been quote unquote diagnosed with POTS, they begin to say, I have POTS, and they realize they never realize they can't get out of that, but they can. And maybe they're on a blood pressure, like some beta blocker or something like that.
Isostigmine.
Totally. They're on that. Can you get off? The answer is yes, but you need some guidance through clinician help like we're talking about to sort of work your way out of that syndrome and basically get it fixed. So if you're out there and you know somebody or you've been quote unquote diagnosed with the POTS syndrome, so to speak of, there are ways out. You can listen to this particular segment over and over again and get some tips and employ each of these, and you can perhaps get free from that crazy POTS syndrome.
What are the effects of alcohol on your body with prolonged use?
Stay tuned for the good, the bad, and the ugly.
Our flagship product is called Kingdom Fuel. Tell us a little bit about Kingdom Fuel and why it's so good.
We saw people struggling with the idea and concept of it's too expensive to eat healthy. So we thought, okay, that's the problem. Let's find a solution. So we found a solution for $5 or under per meal. And that represented the birth of the idea of Kingdom Fuel. So Kingdom Fuel is organic pea protein. It's got greens and reds in it. So this is the phytonutrients from green plants and red plants that we all talk about. Eat your vegetables, right? It's also got vitamins and minerals in it. So it's got a complete complex of that. And it's got also soluble and insoluble fiber, which the difference between the two is profound. Soluble actually gathers moisture and makes you full. And the insoluble goes through the system and grabs things like damaged particles.
The body runs on nutrients. It doesn't run on medication. And Kingdom Fuel is a complete multivitamin and mineral. I don't know about you, but I have to have that cup of coffee in the morning. And Kingdom Cup is mold-free, it is pesticide-free, and it is organic. It's got this flavor that is delicious. You don't even have to put cream or sweetener in it.
And it's Kingdom Cup with a K, right? So this is important. 50% of all coffee at least contains mold. And this is a key thing. That's in bean form, right? So you're going to be a little grinder. They're just a few bucks. Grind it up, put it in your maker, and make it. Why did we go with the bean form, the whole bean? Because ultimately the powder form is the one that gathers the most moisture. And that means the more potential mold development. So this is actually organic, mold-free, certified. It's got a little certificate with it. That's important because ultimately people drink coffee. It's cultural. And so we try to meet the culture where it is and create a healthy alternative.
Alcohol. What effects does it have on your body?
Well, the Bible says to take a little bit of wine for the stomach, doesn't it?
Yes, it does.
I think people
No,
take that a little extreme. Like, does that mean it's always good for you? Well, no, there's a lot of variables. So alcohol, we cannot say just a blanket statement is bad for you because we know that Jesus drank wine, right? We can't say it's bad for you. And what I just quoted was a scripture, where the disciples were told, take a little bit of wine for your stomach, right? So obviously it has some purpose, but it's okay to have alcohol, but it's not okay if it has you. And there's a lot of...
Say that one more time. That's a good point.
It's okay to have alcohol, but it's not okay if it has you. And I'm talking about not just addiction. I'm talking about the dangers of that.
Dependence.
Yeah. Now, in a previous show, we were talking about the fatty liver concept, right? And so with that, there is such a thing as alcoholic fatty liver, where the enzyme alcohol dehydrogenase doesn't work very well. It doesn't break down alcohol, so we end up with that heavy part of that metabolite that's toxic that settles in the liver. So there's a few people like that. There are a few people that can be very addicted if they don't metabolize it and it stays in the system longer. They feel it. In other words, if you have a glass of wine, you might have a little bit of a buzz on it, a little bit of neurotoxic action. Or there are other people that can have a glass of wine and don't have any effect at all.
That's true. And it's going to be the length of time that you've consumed alcohol, and of course it's going to be the quantity of alcohol that eventually has the toxic effects on the body. One of the things that happens in the system that I know from medical practice is there's this thing called Wernicke's encephalopathy.
What is that? Say it one more time.
Wernicke's encephalopathy, where these little tiny mammillary bodies inside the brain become atrophied, if you will, and people start having balance problems. They run into things, and then eventually they start having problems with memory loss or types of dementia. Well, so the brain is one thing that is very affected by alcohol.
Yeah, and that's going to be part of that brain inflammation concept again. It's a toxin that affects the brain and damaged cells. I think there's a few good things about alcohol, and I think we need to acknowledge that. Can alcohol be something that creates relaxation?
It can in the moment, but once that effect wears off, there's going to be a rebound effect, and the heart rate goes up. There's going to be that rebound tachycardia, and it can even awaken someone from sleep. Somebody who's on alcohol long term, the effect on the cardiovascular system, it can create this thing called beriberi, or a dilated cardiomyopathy. It can really affect the structure of the heart.
Yeah, a lot of people drink it to relax. You talked about, how that can be sort of the devil's advocate position right there. Now, there is a well-known diet that promotes the use of alcohol. It's called the Mediterranean diet. But here's the caveat with that. There's some studies that indicate that the polyphenols, or the plant ingredients within the alcohol, the grapes per se, can help elevate HDL, which is the good cholesterol or protective cholesterol. Now, that's true in some to a point. But at the same time, if you're drinking wine, for example, and it becomes inorganic, we can also get some of the pesticides in there and some of the herbicides that are in there, and they actually can hurt you.
So it can create a toxic load.
That's right.
So brain toxic load, it can create heart toxic load or dilated cardiomyopathy. We talked about liver cirrhosis. There's also alcohol is a type of sugar, and too much alcohol can create a gut dysbiosis and overgrowth of certain species of candida or yeast. And that is going to affect memory and cognition and function, energy production to a point as well.
And leaky gut. Can't forget that one either. The people also, even we're not talking about just wine and hard alcohol, we could talk about even beer in this particular discussion. You know, beer has gluten in it, right? Hops and gluten. So we know that gluten can be an issue with beer. And there's people that have a lot of this beer belly, or this distension right here.
Visceral fat.
Visceral fat. And what that is, think about this, the toxins are stored within the fat right in and near your organs.
Yes.
That didn't even sound good.
And the pancreas, one of the other things that alcohol can do is it can elevate triglycerides. And we know that high triglycerides is an independent risk factor for sudden cardiac death.
Yeah.
So too much alcohol, too much triglycerides can equal pancreatitis and actually put you in the hospital. So if you've got visceral fat, it's not just your liver that's affected, it's your pancreas that's affected. And that pancreas, if it becomes troubled and triglycerides go on the rise, here you are in the hospital with IV fluids and insulin to bring those triglycerides down.
I was talking with someone probably 3 or 4 weeks ago who was reviewing this person's lab, and I asked the question, you know, do you drink very much, and how often, and how much do you drink, and what do you drink, and all that. And the triglycerides were elevated at about 300. They should be under 100. Now there's some that could be much higher than that, but the liver enzymes were also elevated. So there was a development there of that alcoholic fatty liver. And it turns out the person was drinking every single night small amounts. Well, what they thought were small amounts, maybe a glass of wine or maybe 2 or 3 beers. But that was every night. And so people are different with this. So we need to really look at the individual cases with this on alcohol and not make it a blanket statement. But if you can avoid alcohol, go ahead. But if you find out perhaps that it's beneficial in some way with your body type, your genetic type, you can do that, but make sure you're drinking organic.
Clean alcohol is what you're saying.
Because if you don't, right, again, a lot of the alcoholic industry today is done with inorganic preparation and production method, which puts a whole load of toxins in there, and that becomes a huge problem with people. So we are not saying that alcohol is bad. Far from that. We're saying there could be some small benefit, true. But overall, there's probably more detriment holistically with alcohol than there is benefit. So choose your poison / drink very wisely.